I'm Tiana Roberts, 32, and I've always prided myself on never needing anyone, especially not a man. Where I come from in Atlanta, I'm what you call a success story. Marketing director at a digital agency by 30, my own downtown apartment with a view that'll make you jealous, and a closet full of labels I worked my butt off to afford. Growing up watching my mama struggle after daddy left, I promised myself I'd never put my financial security in someone else's hands. That's why when I look at my friends who gave up their careers to be housewives, I can't help but feel a mix of pity and irritation. Like, are we living in the 1950s? My boyfriend Marcus and I have been together for 3 years and we split everything 50-50. That's non-negotiable. He works in IT, makes decent money, but honestly, I've always been the more ambitious one. Last month at brunch, my friend Keisha would not shut up about the new Gucci bag her husband bought her. I couldn't help myself. Must be nice needing a man's permission slip to go shopping, I said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Everyone got quiet for a second before awkwardly laughing it off. But I meant it. Why celebrate dependence? When Ayana talks about how fulfilled she feels raising her kids full-time, I remind her that some of us aren't willing to throw away years of education to change diapers. Maybe that's harsh, but somebody needs to keep it real. Marcus thinks I'm too judgmental. Just last week he said, "Tiana, not everyone measures success the same way you do. Whatever." Easy for him to say when he's content staying at the same company for 5 years with barely a promotion. My Instagram is full of work achievements, industry events, and the vacation I paid for myself. Meanwhile, my feed is flooded with my friends posting family dinner photos like, that's something to brag about. At my cousin's baby shower last weekend, I made a toast about women who still think they need a man to complete them. My aunt pulled me aside after and said something about burning bridges. But what does she know? She's been married to my uncle for 30 years and never even had her own bank account. When I got home that night, I checked my account balance, nearly 6 figures in savings, all earned by me. I felt that satisfaction deep in my chest. This is what real independence looks like. The agency's been having some budget issues lately, but I'm not worried. I brought in 3 major clients last quarter. They know my value. I'm already eyeing that new Apple Watch Ultra. I've earned it. I never saw it coming. That Monday started like any other skinny vanilla latte in hand, heels clicking across the lobby floor. Then the all-staff email hit. Mandatory meeting, 9:30 a.m. 2 hours later, I was packing up my desk, a severance package that wouldn't even cover 2 months of my expenses, and a security guard hovering to make sure I didn't steal office supplies. Restructuring, they called it. 40% of staff gone, and somehow my 6-figure position was no longer essential to core operations. The real punch to the gut? Watching junior employees with half my experience and salary keep their jobs. I didn't tell anyone. Not Marcus, not my friends, not my mama. Instead, I kept up appearances. Every morning, I'd dress in my work clothes, kiss Marcus goodbye, and pretend I was heading to the office. In reality, I'd camp out at different coffee shops, burning through data on my phone sending out resumes. I genuinely thought it would only take a couple weeks to find something comparable. I was wrong. So wrong. Companies weren't impressed by my experience as I thought they'd be. We're looking for someone with more digital analytics background. This position is actually more junior than what you're used to. We're unable to meet your salary expectations. Meanwhile, my social media became a special kind of torture. Ayana's husband surprised her with a brand new Lexus SUV with a big red bow on it, like in those Christmas commercials. Keisha posting from some overwater bungalow in the Maldives. And Monique? She's posting daily updates of her kitchen renovation. All marble and custom cabinets. These women who gave up their independence were living like queens while my bank account drained faster than I ever thought possible. Rent on my luxury apartment, car payment on my BMW, student loans, credit card bills from my last shopping spree adds up quick when there's no paycheck coming in. When Marcus suggested a weekend trip to Savannah, I snapped at him about frivolous spending before I could stop myself. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. I've never said no to a trip before. I started picking fights whenever money came up, deflecting before he could ask questions. Last week at dinner with our friends, I nearly choked when everyone started discussing investment properties and private school tuition. I used to lead these conversations. Now I was calculating if ordering an appetizer would put me over budget for the week. When Taylor mentioned her husband's promotion, something inside me snapped. Must be nice to have a man who actually supports his partner's growth, I said. The table got quiet. Marcus gave me this look I couldn't read. That night, a notification popped up on my phone. Credit card payment due. Insufficient funds. Felt like I couldn't breathe. 3 months without a real job, and I'm drowning. I've maxed out 2 credit cards and just got approved for a third that I'm using to make minimum payments on the others. My phone is constantly buzzing with calls from numbers I don't recognize, bill collectors getting bolder by the day. My credit score has dropped almost 200 points. I've had 7 interviews that went nowhere. Either they can't match my previous salary, or they think I'm overqualified and will leave as soon as something better comes along. They're not wrong, I would. The thought of taking a step backward in my career makes me physically ill. But here's the secret no one knows. At night, after telling Marcus I'm working late on a big project, I'm actually delivering food for one of those apps. I park my BMW, which I'm now 4 days away from having repossessed around the corner from my apartment building, so neighbors won't see me. The irony isn't lost on me. Last year, I laughed when Taylor mentioned she was thinking about working part-time while her kids were in school, just to keep busy. Now I'm hustling 20 hours a week just to make minimum payments on debt that's growing faster than I can manage. Marcus found out eventually. He came over unannounced and saw the stack of past due notices I'd hidden in my kitchen drawer. "What is all this, Tiana? Are you in trouble?" The concern in his eyes was almost worse than judgment would have been. I tried deflecting, accused him of snooping, but finally admitted I'd lost my job. Not the full extent of my financial disaster, just the job part. He immediately offered to cover my rent for a month. The very thing I've spent years arguing against financial support from a man was being offered, and a small, desperate part of me wanted to accept. I couldn't do it. "I have savings," I lied. "This is just temporary." Another lie to add to the pile. My housewife friends remain blissfully unaware of my situation, but the distance between us grows wider every day. Keisha showed up to our monthly girls' night with a diamond tennis bracelet, an anniversary gift from her husband. "Isn't it a bit much?" I said, unable to hide my bitterness. "All this materialism?" The women exchanged glances. They know something's off with me, but they don't push. They probably think I'm going through something with Marcus. Yesterday, I found an eviction warning taped to my door. 5 days to pay or face legal action. I spent the afternoon at a pawn shop, trading in designer bags I once flaunted as proof of my success. The guy behind the counter barely looked up as he offered me pennies on the dollar for items that were supposed to hold their value. "Take it or leave it," he said, knowing I had no choice. That night on Instagram, Ayana posted photos of her family's new vacation cabin in the mountains. My thumb hovered over the unfriend button, but instead, I threw my phone across the room. The screen shattered another expense I can't afford. When Marcus called to check on me, I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, but I also couldn't admit how bad things really were. I hit rock bottom at Monique's housewarming party. The invitation had been sitting on my counter for weeks, and I'd considered every excuse not to go. In the end, I showed up with a cheap bottle of wine I was embarrassed to hand over. My clothes hung loose. I've lost 15 pounds from stress, and I hadn't been able to get my hair done in months. The house was everything I once aspired to. Open concept, gourmet kitchen, backyard with a pool and outdoor kitchen. The women were all talking about their husbands' recent promotions, summer vacation plans, and home renovation projects while I silently calculated how many food deliveries I needed to make that week to avoid another late fee on my credit card. Then came the moment I'll never forget. Someone suggested chipping in for a surprise gift for Monique, some expensive piece of art for her new entryway. Everyone reached for their purses while I sat frozen, knowing all 3 of my credit cards were maxed out, and I had exactly $27 in my checking account. Keisha noticed my hesitation and smoothly covered my portion. "You can get me back later," she whispered, a kindness that felt like salt in my wounds. After too many glasses of wine because the alcohol was free and numbed the humiliation, I lost it when Ayana mentioned interviewing nannies for her newborn. "Must be nice to have problems like choosing what to do with your husband's money," I snapped. The whole room went silent. Marcus, who'd been watching me with increasing concern all night, tried to smooth things over, but I was beyond reason. You all think you've got it figured out, letting men take care of you like it's the 1950s. But what happens when they leave? When they trade you in for a younger model? What's your backup plan then? Monique's husband asked me to leave. Outside in the driveway, Marcus finally confronted me about everything: my behavior, my secrets, my lies. What's happening to you, Tiana? This isn't you. But it was me, just a version of me I'd never wanted anyone to see. When I accused him of taking their side, something in him broke. There are no sides, he said quietly. Just you pushing away everyone who cares about you because you're too proud to admit you need help. He called an Uber for himself. I can't do this anymore, were his last words before he left me standing there, alone. I didn't even have my car to drive home. I'd sold it the week before to cover rent. The next morning, my landlord's final notice arrived. Pay in full within 48 hours or face eviction. With nowhere else to turn, I made the call I'd been dreading. Mama, I need to come home for a little while. Living in my childhood bedroom at 32 feels like failure in its purest form. My mother didn't say, "I told you so," but I could see it in her eyes. The contrast between my current reality and my former life hits me every morning. From luxury sheets to my old twin bed with faded floral bedding, from walk-in closet to sharing bathroom with my mama. She insisted I meet with her church friend, who works as a credit counselor. That meeting was a wake-up call I wasn't ready for. It will take 5 years minimum to dig out of this hole, and my credit is shot for the foreseeable future. With few options and bills piling up, I swallowed my pride and accepted a position as an office assistant at a local business, a job I would have scoffed at months ago, paying less than half my former salary. My first day, I nearly cried when they showed me my cubicle. No window, no title, no expense account. Just a computer older than some of my shoes and a phone that actually has buttons. Running into Keisha at the grocery store was a nightmare I couldn't avoid. I was using my mother's food stamps, card another humiliation, when I heard her voice behind me. Tiana, is that you? Instead of the judgment I expected, her face showed genuine concern. She insisted on buying me coffee afterward, and something about the kindness broke through my defenses. I told her some of what happened, not everything, but enough. To my surprise, she didn't gloat or lecture. Instead, she offered help. Her husband's company needed social media content creators, work I could do evenings and weekends to supplement my income. That conversation forced me to reconsider some of my assumptions. Over the next few weeks, I learned things about my housewife friends I'd never bothered to discover before. Ayana hadn't just given up her career to be a mom. Before having children, she'd worked 60-hour weeks in corporate law to support her husband through medical school. Their current arrangement was part of a long-term plan they created together. Taylor revealed that while her husband's name was on their business, she handled all the accounting and client relations from home while raising their kids. Monique shared that their new house was the result of careful saving and investment strategies she developed. These women weren't just beneficiaries of their husband's success, they were partners in creating it. The stability I'd mocked came from mutual support and long-term planning, not dependency. As I worked to rebuild my finances, I reluctantly accepted that my judgments had been based on assumptions and my own insecurities, rather than reality. It's been 6 months since I moved back in with my mother. I'd like to say I've completely changed my perspective, but that wouldn't be entirely true. My credit counselor has negotiated with my creditors, creating a repayment plan that will take 5 years if I'm diligent. The side work from Keisha's connection has grown into steady freelance income, though nowhere near what I once earned. I've started dating again cautiously, with different expectations than before. When Ayana invited me to her baby shower, my first instinct was to decline. The memory of my behavior at Monique's housewarming still makes me cringe. But I went, bringing a thoughtfully chosen but inexpensive gift and an apology I'd rehearsed for days. The women welcomed me back with varying degrees of warmth. During the gift opening, I watched Ayana unwrap expensive presents from the other housewives while I calculated each purchase in my head against my debt repayment schedule. When someone asked about my career plans, I gave a response that acknowledged my changed circumstances without fully admitting my mistakes. I'm exploring opportunities that offer better work, life balance, not a complete ownership of my past judgments, but as far as I could bring myself to go. Later, when Taylor mentioned potentially returning to full-time work as her children enter school, I bit back the automatic criticism that would have once sprung to my lips. I'm learning, reluctantly, to recognize different choices without assigning them value based on my old metrics of success. Watching my friends' seemingly seamless lives still triggers pangs of envy and resentment, but I'm developing a more nuanced perspective. I haven't abandoned my belief in women's financial independence, but I'm beginning to understand that interdependence isn't the same as dependence. My mother notices these small shifts. Last night she said, "Growth doesn't always feel good while it's happening, Tiana." She's right, though I didn't admit it aloud. On my way home from the shower, I got a notification that my student loan payment had been processed, a small victory in my financial recovery. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction, different from my old pride but valuable nonetheless. My phone pinged with a message from Marcus. He's heard about my changed circumstances and wants to meet for coffee. I'm considering it, wondering if it's possible to rebuild connections without the superiority that once defined me. I'm not fully reformed. I still bristle when seeing social media posts about luxury purchases, still struggle with envy when hearing about my friends' financial freedom. But this experience has forced me to confront the hollowness of my former judgments and begin, however reluctantly, to replace them with something more authentic. As I type a response to Marcus, I acknowledge that I'm learning a lesson I never wanted to learn, in circumstances I never imagined facing, with an outcome still being written.